If you're an experienced computer user, chances are you've had to delve into a command line interface from time to time. Whether it's the Windows PowerShell, command prompt, or even the new Windows terminal, or whether it's a terminal app on Linux and macOS, there are certain things that can only be done using a command line interface. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can pimp your terminal to not only make it prettier, but also more productive. I'm going to be showing you how to do this on macOS and Linux, with most of the steps being the same for both. Now, why macOS and Linux? Well, to be frank, that's because those are the operating systems I use. But also because unless you're doing some really advanced stuff on Windows, you very rarely have to access the command line, except maybe refreshing an IP address. On the other hand, the macOS and Linux command lines are very powerful, getting their heritage from their Unix roots. And there are several tasks, especially on Linux, which require you to access the command line interface. So since you're going to use it anyway, why not make it prettier? Whether you're a power user, a system administrator, or a developer, there are tools that we will be considering which make your terminal more attractive but also more productive. We'll be installing Z Shell, which is actually already installed on macOS. We'll then be installing oh-my-zh shell, which is a plugin manager. Speaking of plugins, we'll be installing some plugins, including stuff for developers, administrators, and general users. And we'll also be installing a theme. And I'll be showing you the other themes which are available, which are configurable to your heart's content. So, let me show you how. So we'll start by doing this on macOS. Now, the default terminal app is very Spartan, as you can see here. No colors, basically. However, we are running Z Shell. The latest versions of macOS have switched to Z Shell, as you can see. You can always see the current shell with echo $0. So we'll go ahead and exit that terminal, and I'm going to install iTerm2. Now, if you're using macOS for any serious terminal work, I would strongly recommend iTerm2, as it's much more powerful and fully configurable. So anyway, as usual, I'm going to drag it to the applications folder here, and we'll launch iTerm2, confirming obviously the application. Now, you may want to allow notifications from the terminal, as I'm doing here, and as you can see here, we are in a fresh iTerm2 window. So if I go to echo $0, obviously I'm still using Z Shell, which is great. So now I can start to configure it, and we can do so by going to iTerm2 preferences. Now, of course, this is all optional, guys. I'm just setting the settings that work for me. But basically what I'm going to do is from the closing tab, I'm going to enable quit when all windows are closed. That's because that's how I like to work with the terminal. Of course, you can do whatever. Now, from the Profiles tab, you can set a number of profiles, each storing different settings. The default profile is called, well, default. And this is really cool because you can have different settings for different scenarios. Now, in my case, I'm going to customize the default profile, and I'm going to start by changing the colors. Now, of course, you can change the color of everything, but you can also use one of the color presets that come with iTerm2. Or you can even download other color presets. So you can visit the online gallery, as I'm doing here, and this will give you hundreds of themes that you can choose from. So once you found a theme you like, simply right-click on it and say download linked file. I'm downloading the Material Dark theme here, and then go to iTerm2 and import it. Now, if you're downloading with Safari, it will add a .txt extension. So what you'll need to do is rename the theme to remove the .txt part and confirm that. And now we should be able to import it in iTerm2. So we'll go to import, and there you go, open. And as you can see, it's imported. However, it is not automatically set. So you'll still need to then go and select the theme. From the text tab, I click use built-in powerline glyphs that enables certain icons to be displayed in the terminal. And from here, what I like to do from the window tab is resize the default size of the new windows. I like to use 132 columns and 30 rows. Typically I do this because I need more information displayed, and also because we're going to enable the status bar, which, as you can see, we do from the session tab. And then once you've enabled it, click configure status bar. From here you can add several widgets to the status bar. Again, obviously you can add whatever you want. I like to add my CPU activity, RAM usage, and network throughput. As you can see here, you can rearrange them as you wish. You can even add separators, empty spaces, and stuff like that. And I also like to add snippets. So these are saved snippets of code. I like to choose an auto rainbow, so colors are set. And as you can see, you can individually configure each of the widgets that you add to the status bar, and even the color of separators and so on. So very, very highly configurable. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the preferences. So you can see that lovely status bar up there. Okay, configurable to our needs. So since we're going to be adding plugins to Z Shell, it makes sense for us to install a Z Shell plugin manager. Now there are many of these. The one I like is called oh-my-zh, okay, which basically comes with many built-in plugins that you just need to enable. So here I am on the oh-my-zh GitHub page, and I'm just going to copy the first command, which is a curl command. I'm going to copy that and then go to iterm2, paste the command in there, and then just press enter to have oh-my-zh shell installed. And that's pretty much it. Like that, oh-my-zh shell has been installed. You'll now want to edit your zsh.rc file, which is kind of like your bash rc file if you're used to bash. This contains settings that Z Shell will apply every time it's loaded. And as you can see, there are many settings here, including this one here called plugins. And by default, only the Git plugin is enabled at this point. Now to enable additional plugins, all we need to do is add them. I like to add them line by line. And using the oh-my-zh shell documentation, you can check a list of plugins directly from their GitHub page. So each of these folders represents a plugin. But to make it a bit easier on yourself, you can even go to the oh-my-zh shell wiki, which has a list of plugins there in a format that's easier to browse through them. And yeah, here it is. So again, you can choose whichever plugins you wish and simply add them to that plugins list in the RC file. So for example, here we have a Python plugin. It tells you how to add it. As you can see, just add Python to your list of plugins and it tells you what it provides. So I'm adding AWS, Python, virtualenv, Visual Studio Code, and Xcode support. But again, you can add whatever you wish. Now, once you've added your plugins, I like to exit iterm and reopen it. And this should enable the plugins that we have just enabled in our RC file. Now, of course, we have many features here. So for example, here I typed AWS, and now as I press tab, you'll notice it scrolls through the directories I have, so I can just autocomplete the names that way. And many other plugins will do really cool things. Now let's make it pretty. So there are many themes available for Z Shell. My personal favorite is one called Power Level 10K, which is a fully configurable and highly functional theme for Z Shell. So again, from the GitHub page, you can find installation instructions for different plugin managers, including oh-my-zh shell. So we'll go ahead and copy the download string. We will paste it inside the terminal, and here it will clone and download the theme. And that's it. It's been downloaded. Now, in order to configure the theme, you're supposed to type p10k space configure. But as you can see, when I do that, nothing happens. The reason is I need to go to my RC file and enable the theme. So again, we'll go down here, we'll find the directive zsh theme and change it from Robbie Russell, which is the default, to power level 10k / power level 10k. Now, after doing this, you will need to restart iterm. So again, I'm gonna go exit and open iterm, and this should bring up the configuration wizard, and there we go. So the first thing you'll want to do is install the Meslo Nerd font, which provides us with, well, not just a nice font, but also a lot of widgets. So as you can see, the font is being downloaded and automatically installed. This is supported on iTerm only. So that's been done. So now what we need to do is quit iTerm and start it again. So I'm gonna go ahead and quit iTerm. Okay, so I'm back in iTerm now, and I'll just follow the configuration wizard. So yes, that looks like a diamond. That looks like a lock. That looks like the Debian logo. And the icons do fit between the crosses. Okay, so Power Level is using this to configure your theme depending on the capabilities of your terminal emulator. You can choose the prompt style. I'm gonna go with rainbow because why not? We can choose the character set. I'm gonna go with Unicode. The current time, which I find useful, so I'll choose 24-hour format. And the prompt separators. I like to use angled, but as you can see, there are quite a few options. The prompt heads, I like to use sharp. And the prompt tails, I like to use blurred. Again, obviously, these are just my personal preferences. I do like a one-line prompt, and I do like sparse spacing, although this setting isn't really that important because of something coming up soon. Okay, we can obviously have many icons because pretty. And the prompt flow, I'll choose concise, so that my prompts aren't too big. This is a really important setting, transient prompts. I like to enable this so my terminal doesn't get too cluttered. Okay, so we can now enable verbose for instant prompt mode, and finally we'll apply our changes to our RC file. And there you have it. As you can see, the theme has been installed and is now configured, and yeah, that's nice. And as you can see, we have all the nice colors that are part of the color theme that I installed earlier. Now you can see the plugins in action in the theme. So for example, here I'm creating a directory called my code, and I'm initializing a Git repository in it. And notice how the prompt shows that I am on the master branch with Git. Now I'll go ahead and create a file here, and as you can see, it says that there is one unstaged commit here. And if I go to the test file, I can obviously make some changes just so there's something to commit in the file. Control O, Control X, and I can now stage or add this file to my repository. So I can say git status. As you can see, I need to add that file there, test file. So I'll go ahead and add everything, and again you can see that one new file has been added and is waiting to be committed. And so now I'll go ahead and commit, and as you can see, we're back to green. So as you can see, it's a really useful prompt if you're working frequently with Git repositories. Another cool thing is we can open Visual Studio Code from the current directory. Now, as you can see, by default on Mac, that doesn't work. So what you need to do is you need to go to Visual Studio Code and then press Command-Shift-P to bring up the command palette and choose Install Code command in path. So this will then enable you to execute Visual Studio Code commands from the command prompt. So now I should be able to type code and then the period or full stop symbol to open Visual Studio Code in the current directory. And as you can see, it's opened with test file in there, and there we are seeing its contents. Now, another plugin which I like to install is called the No, you can't bleep that. That's actually the name of the plugin. The plugin is called the Oh, okay, I guess you need to read this, guys. I can't say it on YouTube. But basically what this does is it provides for some auto-correction when you make mistakes. So for example, look at this. I'm saying blue install pip. I meant to type brew. If I press escape twice, as you can see, the automatically corrects the mistake for me. This has saved me a lot of time, guys, over the years. Now here we are on Linux. I'm actually using Pop OS, a variant of Ubuntu, but this will work the same on any distro. And my terminal here is GNOME terminal, which is already pretty configurable, as you can see. Obviously, many other terminal emulators are available for Linux. So here I am in the GNOME terminal preferences, and I'm going to change my terminal size as I did before on iTerm. I can even customize the colors and many other things. And of course, plugins are also available for several of these terminals. So by default, obviously on Ubuntu, we're using bash as our shell. So I need to enable Z shell. Now, if I go to etc shells, you can see that Z shell isn't there. So I need to install it with sudo apt install zsh, or on RPM-based distros, sudo dnf install zsh. So this will install the Z shell, and so after that I'll be able to view it in etc shells and enable it as my default shells. So there it is in etc shells, the last two. So now I'll type chsh, which is change shell. I'll type my password and I'll type the path to Z shell. Now, in order to get this to work, I needed to log out and log back in again. Okay, so here I am logging out. Okay, so we'll log back in. And so now I should be using Z shell. So let's test that out. I'm going to go back to the terminal. And there we are. This is the Z shell configuration function for new users. So we might as well go through this guy. So let's see, you can quit and do nothing, exit, continue to the main menu. Okay, so I'll choose option 1, choose one of the following options. So again, here you can go through the options and change them as you see fit. Guys, again, this is very dependent and subjective, depending on what your preferences are. In my case, what I'm doing is I'm disabling the terminal bell, which I find incredibly annoying. And I'm also changing some other settings, such as these toggles here. So there we are. And again, I'm just changing some more settings here. Again, guys, read them and enable whatever you want. Okay, so that's the configuration wizard done. So now what I need to do is make sure I'm using Z shell, which I am, as you can see. And so now I'll go ahead and install oh-my-zh shell. So again, opening up a browser here, I'm going to search for oh-my-zh shell. And this time, rather than the GitHub page, I went straight to the website. But again, it doesn't really make a difference because you can click install oh-my-zh shell, which will give you the command, the curl command you can use to get that done. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it, paste it in my terminal, press enter, and have oh-my-zh shell installed. Now, as before, you'll want to modify your zshrc file to change your theme and enable any plugins you wish. So I'm starting here with my plugins. As you can see, the default enabled plugin is Git. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few other plugins which I like to use, like VS Code, Python, and blah blah blah, basically anything else that you wish. Okay, so I've now quit the terminal and will open it again, and I should have my plugins working at this point. Next, we'll go to power level 10K to install the theme. Similar but not identical to what we did on macOS. You see, on macOS we were using iTerm, which supports automatically installing the recommended font. But on GNOME terminal we can't do that, so we have to go to the recommended fonts section, open each font with the font installer, and make sure to install each of the 4 fonts. Otherwise we'll have a lot of missing glyphs, emojis, and other symbols like that. So once you've installed the font, you can then go to the terminal and make sure that you change your font to the font that you have just installed from power level 10K. So here I'm going to GNOME terminal, I'm searching for the Meslow LGS NF regular font and click select. So that sets the terminal font, which power level 10K will then use to display all its symbols. So now we'll go to the oh-my-zh shell instruction on the power level 10K page, and as we did on a Mac, we'll simply paste that in our terminal, press enter, and that's installed the theme. So again, p10k configure doesn't work, so what we need to do is enable that theme in our zshrc file. So as before, we'll remove the default theme, which is Robbie Russell, and replace it with power level 10k / power level 10k. Okay, we'll save and exit the file, and then we'll close the terminal and open it again. Okay, so now p10k configure works, and as before, we'll go through the configuration options as we did on Mac, confirming the icons, confirming our prompt style, confirming the character set, the time, the prompt separators, the prompt heads, the prompt tails, the prompt height, the spacing, the icons, the prompt flow, the transient prompt, which I always like to enable, and finally the writing of the configuration file. And as you can see, there we are. We are now using power level 10K with a nice tux icon there at the beginning. On certain distributions of Linux, for example, if you're using pure Ubuntu, that will display the Ubuntu logo. And as you can see, the plugins are working as well. As you can see, with a few short steps, you can have a functional, good-looking terminal that you won't dread using every time, hopefully making your life easier and not more frustrating. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I was considering maybe starting a mini-series on how to use the Mac, Linux, and even Windows command line to achieve certain tasks, as well as day-to-day use and stuff like that. If you're interested in learning more about the command line interface, drop me a comment down below and I'll be sure to take note. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it really does help a lot. I'll catch you in the next video, and until then, as usual, thanks for watching.